Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time, yeah, Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time, yeah. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz, tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. That's right, Miss Liz is back, and you know what that means. It means story time and words. And that's right, we don't serve a beverage in this house. We serve a different type of tea. We serve real life stories and real life organization, businesses, authors, all of that incredible stuff so you can enjoy. So before we get started, we're going to get you over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel. We're going to get you to ring that little doorbell so you can subscribe to Miss Liz and be notified when all these tea times are being live. If you'd like to join the live stream in this conversation this afternoon, we wish you would. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave those in the comment section of the studio, or you can private DM Miss Liz on her Facebook page, and I'll get those questions out to my incredible guests that I have today. The guest that I have today in the house is Carrie Graham, and I met Carrie a few weeks back, and today we're here and we're going to spill some tea on adult learning. That's right. We're going to do an engagement, retention, application, teaching everyone appropriately. That is the tea that we will be serving today in the house. So before we get started, we're going to get the disclaimer, bio, and then we're going to get Carrie in here and we're going to spill some tea together and we're going to go down some loopholes, some rabbit holes, all of that good stuff. And we're going to get you to enjoy a good, entertaining tea time this afternoon. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live shows. Miss Liz, myself, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forth in good faith. However, may bring forth dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that relates to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that the show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and we'll see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Time shows are hosted on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you see a tea time on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's a surprise, rescheduled, or a special tea time. So now a little bit about who's in the house, who's in the studio. Well, I have Dr. Carrie Graham in the back. Dr. Carrie Graham has never fit in the box of traditional expectations in school and at work. Despite often feeling restrained and overlooked, she learned how to use her natural skills to open doors for herself and others. Dr. Graham has leveraged her curiosity to help women tap into their real potentials. Dr. Graham has a reputation of understanding stated and unstated problems, then asking critical questions to help uncover clear and actionable solutions, not believing in the one-size-fits-all approach. She customized learning solutions to support complex individuals and organizational learning needs. Let me get Dr. Carrie Graham in here and let's spill some tea together. Welcome. Welcome, Carrie.
Hi, Miss Liz. How are you?
I am good. The opening always takes me on a real loop. I'm just like da 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 da. I sound like a rambling ox coming in for a big party.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. You totally set the stage. I'm honored to be here, and I'm so excited to see where our conversation goes today.
So, Dr. Carrie Graham, let's take you way back.
Yeah.
Who was Carrie as a little girl, and who's Carrie now?
Oh my goodness. You don't waste any time, do you?
Don't. I get right in and get that deep tea going.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, the Dr. Carrie Graham that I am today is not who I ever thought I would become. That younger version of myself was an incredibly shy, inquisitive, played games within her head. I was an only child for 13 years, the first 13 years of my life. And then my beautiful sister joined our family. But so I spent a lot of time alone and entertaining myself and was quiet. I just was a quiet kid. And while my friends were growing and exploring and becoming, popular, so to speak, I still I kept to myself and within myself. And while, in my teens and even in my early 20s, I felt like that was a limitation. What I started to learn was that I could use it to my advantage. So the fact that I don't fit and that I'm not like everyone at that time, I'm not like everyone else. And it fit. And what I found was people would tell me things. People would tell me the things I did not want to know, but they would just tell me stuff, very personal things about themselves. And I kept thinking, like, why does this keep happening to me? And fast forward, I'm 51 now, and I realize all of that was setting the stage for the work I do today. So I learned the power of listening, like true active listening, listening with compassion, listening with empathy to what people are saying, as well as what they're not saying. Leveraging that and continuing to invite people to tell me things, but recognizing that that is an honor. And I hold, when people tell me, I don't know, their secrets or what have you, those things that are very private to them, I cherish, and I honor those things. And I guide them. If they've asked me to, I guide them through a journey of exploration to a solution that they have identified for themselves, but they need some support getting there.
So, Carrie, what got you into adult learning?
It was purely by accident. I'm just going to tell the truth, right? Like no one has ever asked me why. They asked me what it is, but not why. It was truly by accident. So I had some professional experiences that were not great that led up to me pursuing a doctorate. And actually, I was planning to go in one direction, and a gentleman that I worked with at the organization where I was working, we didn't work directly together, but we were in the same division. And he goes, "Can I buy you a cup of tea? I heard you were pursuing a doctorate in this area." And I'm like, sure. Like, we've never really had lengthy conversation, but sure. And in that conversation, he shared with me, he's like, he offered some guidance. It was totally unsolicited. I don't know why he felt, and it took an interest in me in that moment or in that phase of my life. And he goes, "I think this other thing, this adult learning might be the better fit for you. I encourage you to explore it." He did not lie. I sat in that first class and I was like, this is for me. And it's because it spoke to my experiences, like my workplace learning and my workplace development experiences. It spoke to my relationships and how you interact with others. It really touched all parts of who I am, who I was, and who I want to be. And so adult learning, I stumbled on it.
Well, you stumbled on it and you got a free cup of tea.
I got a free cup of tea. Absolutely. I got a free cup of tea. And it has really touched my heart. I mean, I have a prior career as a healthcare provider and then a healthcare educator in sports medicine. I retired my credential, but board certified. And so it's just not something that I never dreamed of. It was never in my wildest dreams, never.
Well, you see, you just got to spill tea sometimes and get a cup of
Sometimes.
tea.
Absolutely.
Accidents make for a good story.
Absolutely. They always do. They always do. And, that's also one of the things that I've learned. And I think it's, the adult learning piece speaks so much to me because I really, I view my life, and I always have viewed my life as an adventure. And I always say this, every day is truly an adventure. And it's, what are you going to do with the adventure? Are you going to just plow through it, or are you going to view it as an opportunity to learn something, whether it's learn about a thing, learn about other people, or learn about ourselves? And I always learn something more about myself every single day, every day.
Well, Dr. Carrie, spilling the tea in a good way, right?
Yes.
Making an accident and having that adventure open the doors and opportunities. So I want to talk to you about adult learning. Because we don't talk about adult learning very much. We talk about children learning in elementary schools and public schools and high school and all that, colleges and universities, but we don't talk about adult learning.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about society on that topic not being out there?
Yeah, it is not a commonly discussed topic. The field has been around for decades. The research has been around for decades. But, I think so often people identify, oh, well, I'm a lifelong learner. That's a term that you hear frequently. I'm a lifelong learner. And oftentimes when people use that language, what they're referring to is, oh, I like to learn new hobbies. I want to take a class. I want to learn a new skill. And yes, those are elements of lifelong learning. But the other part of lifelong learning is recognizing, how do we emotionally regulate? Right? As a continuous process. How do we grow in our spiritual walk if that's important to someone, right? Those are also elements of learning. And depending upon what that looks like, that journey can be lifelong, right? So like a walk of faith, parenting, right? Like those can be lifelong experiences, but rather me learning how to make lamb chops one year for my family for the holidays. Like I figured it out like the night before, right? I learned something the night before. I did the thing. We ate it. It was good. That was like 6 years ago. I haven't done it since, and I have no desire to do it since, right? Like, so yes, I was learning in that moment, but it was such a short window of time. That does not make for lifelong learning.
Yeah.
So it's what I've seen in the world today is, because there's so much information in the online and the digital world and all things consumerism, people are bombarded with information that requires cognitive processing. That is an element of learning.
Yeah.
Right. So to consume, whether it's visually or you're hearing something or whatever the case may be, your brain is consuming that information. And the cognitive processing is an element of learning. And now that you've processed and learned, you then have a decision. Do I act on that information, or do I just store it somewhere? Yeah. And that's, I think, where a lot of the like online and digital fatigue comes in. It's because people are attempting to process like 50 tabs that are open, whatever the case may be. They've processed it, and they are now at a place of what am I going to do with that information? And for the information that's not needed, and you just set it aside, You can't unlearn something. You don't unknow things. And so that process of learning, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
And so we are in us culturally as a global society, I would say we're at a place of intellectual and cognitive fatigue.
Well, we're exhausted, right? Because there's so much
Always.
coming at us, and we're just like, whoa, can we just take a break?
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
know?
and when we make those statements, like it's not always that simple. And I don't mean it from the, oh, we're addicted to our screens, right? But like there's that process element of it. And so, full transparency, before you and I started this conversation, I would say I probably had 15 tabs open, and some of them were for the same site, but just a different page on the site. That's a lot of information, right? So, okay, I'm over here using these tabs. Now I need to go back. Well, which one was it, right? So now I'm clicking back and forth. Like the brain has to process all of that information. Like,
What's right, Dr. Carrie? It's like it is connect the dots, right?
yeah.
You're connecting the dots, like zig, 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 and then you end up where you're like, oh my god, what did I just do? You know, where your brain just says like, wow, this is overload. So what do? Oh, do I take 1 and 4? Do I take 4 and 7? Or do I go like, you know what I mean? So we're no
Yeah.
longer making a picture out of it. We're just making zigzags, and we're like
Right.
overwhelmed, right? And we're
Right.
getting fatigued. We're getting burnt out. We're having all of these businesses and organizations that are just starting to shut down because there's just too much.
Yeah, yeah. And I just had the thought of when you send an email, like you hit the send button too quickly, or you close out something when you didn't mean to. Like all of those are, I mean, some would say, oh, you're just ready to get it over with, right? Like you were acting too quickly. I would say, yes, that's part of it, but it's the fatigue, right? Like you want to get on to the next thing, not because you don't want to, type the email, or you don't want to spell the words correctly, right? Like you do want to do those things, but it's the fatigue. You know that your brain is telling you there are other things we have to do and we need to attend to. Okay, this is done. When in reality, it's just an outline. It's not a cohesive email or whatever the case may be.
Or you send half an email, right? And then you're like,
Yes.
oh, I forgot. I
Yes.
sent, right? And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, where did I leave off?
Right. I would say that all of that, it fits in the field of learning, right? Like we've learned our brain has learned how to, when we're typing a sentence, to fill in the gap. And so our fingers skip a word.
Yes.
Like that is it's a part of learning. And, one of the things that I've seen in the marketplace since I've been a consultant full time is this idea and this concept of unlearning, right? People, yes, the gentleman's name escapes me right now. He did write a book that was titled Unlearning or Unlearn. And people have just taken that like off the rails. But if you actually read the book, I haven't read the book, but I've skimmed it and I get what he was going for. But the reality is you cannot unlearn something. It is humanly impossible. Once you know something, you either forget it or you remember it, but you choose to not use that and use an alternative. It's like conflict resolution, right? You've learned that yelling helps you get your point across. And then you find yourself in a season of life where yelling no longer, it's ineffective. You can't unlearn the skill of yelling. Instead, you learn an alternative and you make an alternative decision. And I would say like that is one of those things. And this is a little bit of tea about me. That is one of those things that annoys me to death, right? Is when I hear people say, oh, well, we have to unlearn. We have to, no, you cannot unlearn anything. you learn new skills and you get to choose a different path.
Yeah.
It's like seeing one, like seeing something that you wish you couldn't see. You can't unsee it.
Right. Well, you can't put a bunch of uns in front of everything, right? Because that's undoing your life, undoing a situation, undoing a moment, a memory.
Right.
Like you
Right.
can't do that, right?
Right. Mm-mm. You can't. You can't. You cannot. You can choose different. You can make different choices.
You can pretend that you forgot.
Right. Right. But that is the one thing, right, that I just shake my head and like, oh, with the unknowing.
Well, it's like the series of the dummies books, right?
Yes.
Those
Yes.
books irritate me because
Mhm.
when I first seen the title, I was like, so what? We're all a bunch of dummies. We can't
Right.
do like just the title. I was just like seriously, but it grabs people, and
It does. It does.
it's really it amazes me, right? That that word dummy grabs you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
unlearn grabs you
Right.
instead
Right.
of learning and growing and
Mhm.
finding
Choosing. Yeah.
solutions. Like even the word solution, you have a conversation with somebody and they don't want a solution, they just want to complain and they just want to keep staying in that broken
Right.
circle, right? Of,
Right.
oh well,
Right.
I can't do that, I can't. The word can't drives me up the wall too. Yes, you can.
You can. Your can't is my choose, right? Like
Yeah,
we all get to choose. We may not like the options. We may not like the options, but we still get to choose. Like
absolutely.
I would say on a daily basis, I don't like the options. The option is stay in bed in the mornings and not get a good start to my day, or I can get up and go for a walk. Like for me, those are the only two options. I don't like
Right.
either one of them. I really don't like either one of them, but I got to
But then
do
the walk is done and then the day is started and then you're
right.
moving, right? But if you stay in bed and you're just like, okay, well, it was like yesterday. I had booked 3 tea times for December, right? And I was like, well,
Yeah.
I'll just stay in bed because I seem to be booking. And then I'm just like, well, no, that's not the way it works. It was just a timing that the emails came in that they had confirmed. And I was just like, okay, well, no, we're not doing this. We're getting up, we're moving, and we're getting
Yeah.
the day moving,
Yeah.
but it's a choice, right?
It's a choice. It is a choice. It's not that I can't. I'm with you. Like, it's not I can't do something. Well, you can. It's the choice of how are you going to do it, right? Like, I, I give up things periodically for fasting or for Lent for religious reasons. And for years ago, I had to change my narrative and my language around, well, I can't have, right? To, you know what? I'm choosing to sacrifice X, Y, and Z because we can really do whatever we want, like, and assume the benefits as well as the consequences. Like we do have more autonomy of choice than we like to admit that we have. Like you said, people want to stay in a place of complacency and complaining.
Yeah. Well, it's
Mhm.
learning, right? It's all learning. It's all moving forward, guys.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
pouring that cup of tea. Like you got to pour the water into the cup. You got to put the tea.
Mhm.
You have to do the work for it. You know. Uh,
Mhm.
let's go into. I want to get into the era, and
Yeah.
when I talk about the era, is Dr. Carrie's era of engagement, retention, and application. Let's talk about those words, and let's talk about why you came up with the era.
Yeah. Yeah. So the era, it stems from me solving, or not solving, but for me addressing a frustration. So as a healthcare provider, as a professor, I was required to required to attend trainings. Some of them were board mandated, some of them were state mandated, whatever the case may be. And I got to a stage in my career where I'm like, this is boring. I don't like it. Or this is confusing. I know they're smart, but I don't know what they're talking about. And then the last thing was, oh, this was interesting and it made sense, but I don't know how to apply it. Right. So it was like month after month of me having this experience. Come to find out I wasn't alone. And that's what I found to be a constant theme, a consistent theme throughout most trainings, regardless of what industry, what area. There was this lack of engagement, and not entertainment, but engaging the audience in a way that's meaningful to them. Then there was this way in which content wasn't constructed so that people comprehended and remembered, right? So it's like information was just presented, but there was no rhyme or reason real for the audience, so to speak. And then it was not knowing what to do with it. Like, that's problematic. If we think about law enforcement, and I say this because my husband is retired law enforcement, is that you have trainings, and sometimes if people don't know how to use the information, not only is their life in jeopardy, but the life of others is in jeopardy. So as I ventured as a consultant, I realized it's truly around people need support around how do we engage the user, the audience, in a way that matters to them so that they're motivated to lean in and pay attention and continue to learn, right? So like that's a large body of the work that I do with clients is how do we engage your audience? The second part around the R with retention, it's the information retention, remembering the information. It goes back to me using my years, 2 decades as a faculty member. It's you have to sequence information for people, right? You can't be so excited you're giving them everything you know and expecting them to land where you are today. You really have to like start with the basics, check in with them to make sure, like, do the basics make sense? We all on the same page, right? And if not, then stay there, fill those gaps, build the information in a way that helps them remember, right? So like asking them to repeat things and, all of those tricks. And by doing that, you're reinforcing, you're helping and guiding your audience to remember the information. And now, in order to get them to actually apply it, well, you have to show them how to apply whatever it is and build their confidence in it, right? So like Liz, how many times, I'm sure you can appreciate that there have been times where you knew what to do and how to do it, but you weren't confident. And so you didn't do it, right? Or there have been instances where you have confidence, right? And so those are the people I think who like, they'll just go out and fumble and make all the mistakes, right? Because they have the confidence.
I'm
they
that
don't.
fumbler.
Right? Sometimes I am.
Fumble, I'll fall, I'll try again, I'll get back up.
Right. But so you have the confidence to do it, but you don't have the skills. You haven't developed the appropriate skills. And so in the application piece of it is a training and a facilitator, a coach, a trainer, however you want to call yourself. You have a responsibility to help build confidence. And I don't mean rah, you can do it, but building internal confidence and developing skill development so people know how to do the thing. So that's where the ERA comes from, the ERA, engagement, retention, and the application. And I wanted to make sure that the work that I do can be broken down to its like barest of bare foundations, and that's what it is. It's ERA.
Well, I think it's deeply important, Dr. Carrie, to have people like you out there, because we have a bunch of fumblers like me that don't have the skills. We'll just try. We fall. Okay, we get back up. But
Right.
we do need to learn. We need the, it's that lifelong learning that you mentioned about, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we have different coaches and different mentors and different fields of work out there, is to
Yeah.
work together, collaborate together, connect together, and stay motivated together. We
Yeah.
can motivate larger audience and larger individual groups when we work together than when we stand by ourselves.
Absolutely.
We could stand by ourselves. Everybody can stand by themselves, but it's to get that motivation. And
Mhm.
I was told a couple of years ago, give the 3 E's when you're speaking as a public speaker: the entertainment, engagement, and education. Bring your 3 E's to the table.
Mhm. Mhm.
But a lot, we're only bringing 2 of the E's. Well,
Yep.
if you're missing that third E, whether
Yep.
it's the engagement or the education it doesn't flow.
Mhm.
It's like oh, right? Where you need that
Right.
tick, tick, tick. It's like back to the dot, right? It's like
Yeah.
that 1, 2, 3, but you're jumping
Yeah.
from 1 to 3 instead of you're missing the two.
Right. And
Doing
another part of that I think that happens today is it's easier to do the one, right? It's easier to focus on the entertainment piece for some people, I'll say. It's easier to do that. It's easier to spew off all of your expertise and just stay at this level where you're super comfortable and confident and knowledgeable and just spew and spew and spew. But if you stay with, like, if you only stay in that 1E, you're still going to miss the mark, right?
Yep.
Because ultimately, entertainment only can take you so far. And I tell people that like all the time, and my clients who really rely or they want to rely on entertaining people, I'm like, it's not even a great source of motivation. In my mind, like if your end goal is to change behavior and educate people, like solely focusing on the entertainment, it's not enough. Like you're missing the mark. You're missing the mark.
Well, it
Um,
comes back to the training and skills, right? You,
yeah.
you just change the letters. You change, the S and the T, but you got to bring stuff to the table. You can't just go there with, okay, this is the bread, and we're just gonna make a big old party with bread, right? Where's the butter? Where's the meat? Where's the cheese? Like, come on, we got
Right.
to bring to the table, right?
You
And that's what I'm finding is we're not bringing stuff to the table. We're
do.
coming in and we're just saying, well, da 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 da. I can make you all laugh and giggle. Now, when the show is done, how many people took anything in,
Right. Right.
right? But we're
Right.
not getting people motivated. And you had mentioned something, the retention, right? For
Mhm.
me, it's repetition.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
repeat, repeat, repeat. Ask
Mhm.
questions, get engaged. Ask your audience and your listeners, do you enjoy what I'm bringing to the table? Would you
Mhm.
like to see something different? Am I not bringing something that you would like to see come to the table?
Yeah.
Have those conversations.
Right.
And that's what we got when we talked, when we did our one-on-one, is
Yeah.
we were like, okay, we need to bring this to the table. We need to bring the era to the table for people to
Mhm.
engage, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you ask questions, like as the facilitator, so let's just use this as an example. If I'm facilitating a session and I ask, well, does this make sense? Right? Because I said it, there, I said the thing, therefore it makes sense to me. But if I ask, well, Liz, does that make sense to you? And you say, no, I didn't really get it. That's a learning opportunity for me to figure out a better way to support you in your learning.
Yeah.
Like it is truly a back and forth. It is every learning experience that is set should be an equal exchange. And I have found that people don't recognize it as such. And I'm going to go so far as to say when I first started teaching, I made that mistake. I made the mistakes of focusing only on entertainment, or I'm focusing so much on the content, like the rigor of the content, that I was like, for a good first 2 years, I kept losing people. And then it wasn't until I said, like, I recognized it wasn't about me. And I said, well, does this make sense to you guys? And they were like, no. Like, that was a fun activity, but you didn't connect anything for
Yeah.
us.
There was no
Or
dots connected, right?
there
It
were
was,
no dots connected.
where do we go?
Right. Like, what do I do? Or it was, you are clearly the smartest person in the room, but we don't have a clue what you just said.
Yeah.
And like, when I got that feedback, it was humbling, because I'm like, I have totally missed the mark. I've totally missed the mark. I have got to do things differently. And so when you, as a facilitator, when you view your presentation or your workshop or whatever the case may be as an opportunity for your audience to also teach you something in that moment, like, when you recognize that and step confidently into that role, that is when your skill set skyrockets. It really skyrockets. You will be amazed at, like, the impact that you can have on your audience. It's unreal. It is truly mind-blowing.
Well, Dr. Carrie, I always say this, right? I learn so much from my guests.
Yeah.
Like, we go down rabbit holes and we spill tea and we use words and we do storytelling and we get to know each other one-on-one. The audience gets to know a little bit about who Miss Liz is, because sometimes Miss Liz just likes to slip and share a little bit of stuff, And
Right.
yes, I'm a big dot person. If nobody has known that yet, I just bought myself for Christmas some dot books.
I love it. I love it.
But I think these are things that we should be bringing to the table, is getting feedback and being okay with feedback,
Yes.
because that's where we learn and grow. That's how we can improve ourselves. If we come into the table and we say, well, no, we know everything. We don't need you to tell us how to do our show. We don't need you to tell us how to do this. We're not learning. We're not leaving room to grow ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know why this just came to mind, but for your listeners, I want you to think about, when was the last time you looked in a mirror, whether you were getting dressed or even getting undressed, whatever the case may be, you were getting feedback.
Yeah.
You were getting feedback. Like, is everything where I want it to be? Like, oh, is that, thing doing whatever. It is all feedback. And so people think about, oh, well, I don't want to get any feedback. I don't really want to ask what people think because I'm afraid. Like, it is not a judgment of your character. It simply is information. And everyone's feedback is valid because that is their perspective, right? It's like, you cook something and you ask everyone at the table, do you like it? And let's just say everyone says no. Okay. Well, why do you like it? Or one person might say yes. And so you start with them. Well, why do you like it? Well, it reminds me of a dish my mom used to cook or my dad used to cook, and they were a horrible cook. But nevertheless, it reminds me of them. So it's good to me, right? Like, it's still bad, but they, that's their perspective. You ask other people, someone might say it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too sweet. It is their reality. And then you get to choose what you do with that information. Period.
No, you could just go in the room and cry and say, you know what, I'm never doing that again. I'm not bringing that to the table, or you could say, you know what, I can try again.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Teach me the skills. Like, maybe somebody can teach you how to simmer it a little longer or add the flavors, right? If you get no feedback, how can you improve it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's every day is an opportunity to learn something. And even when we don't want to learn things, we're going to learn something.
Yeah. Every day is a learning day. And I always learn from my guests. I want to get into your T, the TEA words. So you gave me teaching everyone appropriately. And I like that word appropriately, but teaching everyone. I like that as well, because it's
Mhm.
showing that everyone can learn.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
tell me why you gave me those three words, Carrie.
Yeah. So I would say teaching, because it goes right back to what we were just talking about, right? Like learning opportunities are everywhere. At this today, our seasons are changing, right? Like everyone knows the seasons are changing. How do you dress for the day when you know there's going to be a 20-degree change, right? Like you can teach anything to anyone. And what a great way to build relationships by teaching. It doesn't have to be rigorous. It can be like, hey, let me show you a trick that I learned, right? So that's the teaching part. It can be a beautiful thing if you view it that way. Everyone, meaning it's available, right? Like everyone can engage, everyone has an opportunity to engage. Um, it's available. It is truly available to everyone if they open their eyes and welcome it. But I added the A because that's, I think, where we often get it wrong, and it's the appropriately. Um, when we think about adult learners, oftentimes workplace trainings and such are developed, or even like small businesses use training and coaching methods that they themselves have experienced, and they may not be effective. But if that's all that you know, that's what you're going to do. And so it's the appropriate piece, right? Like people need to be provided information in a way that matters to them. To them. I used to work in sports medicine, and part of that work was rehabilitation, strength and conditioning. And I remember one time walking into the weight room and people were just yelling at this one person who was on the bench, just yelling, yelling, yelling. And when it was all said and done, I asked the individual, I said, does that really work for you? Like all the yelling, does it really like work for you? And they said, yeah, I asked them that the more they yell at me, the more like to pump me up, like to lift the barbell, that worked for them. I said, oh, okay. Okay. But it got me thinking, I don't like that. I don't
Yeah.
like loud voices. I just don't like loud voices. And so when it comes to motivating me, I don't need that. I want someone to speak softly, even more so to me, like rub my back, like, you got this. It's okay. You got it. You can lift the car over your head. It's okay. And
It's gonna hurt, but you can do it.
it's gonna hurt, but you can do it. I have faith in you, right? Like it's the appropriate meaning what matters for that individual. It goes back to that engagement
Yeah.
piece. The appropriately, it goes back to how are we sequencing information? How are we sharing the information? How are we presenting it? Are we presenting it in a way that makes sense for them or just makes sense to ourselves?
Yeah.
Right? So it's teaching everyone, but the appropriateness is the key for me.
Well, and Dr. Carey, goes right back to you as a child, right? Out of the box. You thought
Yeah.
outside of the box. Not everybody, and me too. If somebody's yelling at me, it shuts me down. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, like I'm
Yeah.
just like I'm tapped out. I, I'm just like the next person's gonna yell louder. I've already tapped out because the first guy that yelled at me, I'm gone. Like,
Right.
I don't like it. I'd
Mhm.
rather have somebody like, you got this. Like, try it. Give it, if you
Mhm.
fall, you're going to get up. That's the kind of,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
but I've noticed that with your business as well, is that you work with individuals and small businesses and medium-sized businesses and larger businesses, but you go in with a different approach for every single business.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Instead
do.
of the same approach, right? Because then everybody be like, well, she did that over there.
Yeah.
If somebody comes to a webinar and they've seen you at that webinar and you go in, you do this, they're like, oh, well, I've already seen that. I'm not.
Right. Right. And honestly, if I'm going to spill the personal tea right now, like from a business owner's perspective, like that's one of the things that I've really struggled with when people are like, oh, give me your elevator pitch and give it to me in one really quick statement. I've struggled with that because I firmly believe that every business is different. And even though I use the era approach and I jokingly say it's going to be a new era in your business, right? Like I use that as my guardrails.
Yeah.
That's it. But literally every conversation, every way that I support a business, it is so vastly different. Like if we open the playbook, it's so different that one, I'm proud of that I have the skills, like I have the breadth and the depth of skill sets that I can do that. I can offer that as a service. But I find it hard to stand out, right? And we talked about this, right? In the vast landscape of all the noise, I really have found that to be a challenging part of business ownership. And I know I'm good at what I do. I've been blessed in that regard. People have told me as such, but how I talk about it, I still haven't figured that part out because it's different. Mhm.
Well, it's like building a bridge, right? And filling in the gaps.
Yeah.
Somebody might put ropes all across their bridge, right? And they just keep building with the ropes and the planks, the ropes and the planks. Well, and Dr. Carrie builds a bridge with a rope, a plank, and a chain.
Right. Like we don't know.
Right?
And that's the beauty of like whenever people, reach out to me and they're like, I've been thinking about, I'm considering, looking for someone and such. I get super excited. And I get excited because I'm like, here's an opportunity for their business to shine. Like first and foremost, like their business is going to shine. It's going to get better. They are going to feel more fulfilled because they're doing what they want to do with excellence. But then when I think about, I'm going to get in their tea and I'm going to see what, it's like a puzzle. How can we make all of this more refined? And I don't want to say better, but really refine what beautifulness is already there.
Well, understanding the tea within.
Yes.
Because everyone's tea is different. And that's why all of my guests have different words. And sometimes you use the same word as another guest, but that doesn't resonate. It resonates in a different way because you might be giving me teaching and another guest gives me teaching, but they're teaching in different ways.
Right.
Bringing something different to the table. It's coming back to that table,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing what you can bring and what you can add to the party. And let's just have some fun with it and stay motivated and engaged and entertainment and education. Education is really fun. I love it because it really opens the mind to understanding, right?
Yeah.
So Dr. Carrie, I want to get into research.
Okay.
When you hear the word research, what comes to mind to you?
It's another one of those words like,
This is why I asked you, because I knew she's got the power. We're going to do this.
Gosh, right? Like, So I say that because as a healthcare provider, as a clinician, when you are gathering research about a patient, you are doing an assessment, you're taking in all the information, you're gathering as much data as possible to either make a diagnosis, to make a recommendation for treatment, whatever the case may be. So that's practical. as a scholar, which I am, who has conducted research studies, analyzed data, I've used research methods, right? Reliable and validated research methods, specific methods. All of that requires skill. And it's not like you can't just come off the street and say, oh, yeah, I can conduct a research study using methods, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are lots of elements that you have to learn, and everyone can learn them, but you have to learn them. And so that's the framework that I have skills at, and I love. I love that level of research. Let me get on Google.
Right.
Google. Let me get on, like, my two keyboards here.
And you know everything because you've Googled it.
Yeah, like this keyboard and that keyboard. And my phone, right? Like, let me do that is not research. It's information gathering, but that's really all it is. It's information gathering.
Yeah.
But when you are truly conducting some form of research, it is steeped in methods. Like, you have to use reliable and validated methods to get a finding that you can trust. And I am on Google, and I'll be the first to admit, yes, I do Google things like, how do I da 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 da. But the next time you Google something, look at the number of results that pop up.
Yeah.
Not one person within an hour can research 12 million results that Google has populated. That's not doing research. You are simply looking at the first 5, whatever Google pops up for you, and you're using that information. That's data. That's like data gathering, information gathering. And that's okay. It is okay to do that. But if you're going to talk about using research in your training programs or in your coaching programs and such, I want to caution people, and I want to challenge your listeners to really be careful about the word choice that you're using, right? Like, if you're going to say, oh, well, my results are based on research. Well, whose research? Like, really? Like,
The first 5 on Google.
Like, let's really think about that. And so all of it is fine. And if that's what you're using, that's fine. Call it what it is.
Yeah.
Just call it what it is. I have, the last time I used like in a social media post or something, like, based on the research like, it's been a couple years since I've said that.
Yep.
But I know what that means. That means, like, I went in and I had to read these people's bodies of work. I had to get a very clear understanding. I couldn't just take one line out of a published peer-reviewed paper and say, I'm going to use that. Like, yeah, I just wish people would be careful with the words that they use.
Well, it's going right back, Dr. Carrie, to the language that we speak, right?
Yes.
Like we spoke earlier in the show, can't. Yes,
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
Change the way that you speak to yourself.
Yep.
Change the way that you speak to others.
Mm-hmm.
Make different choices, because we all have a choice. We
have
can either stay in bed or we can go for that walk. Once the walk is done, well, then we make breakfast. Then we make, then we make an appointment. Then we go here. Then we go, we go shopping. But we have to make that choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to take the steps in order to get the skills and the training. And that's why I wanted to have you on Teatime, Dr. Carrie, is because I want people to understand that there are educators out there that have the skills and the proper training and that will look towards your business and say, well, no, you can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. Where let's see if we give it a try this way. Let's see if we spill it this way.
Right.
Give it a try for like 3 months. If that doesn't work, okay, well, we'll go to this way.
Right. And that's one of the things that I do with my clients. I actually don't use the word can't with my clients. I wish one of my clients, if I have used the word can't and they're hearing me in this episode, please reach out to me and say, yeah, you told me I can't, because I don't think I ever did say that. But I would say I don't use the word can't because it's your business. It's your business. You get to choose if you want to use a practice or a method that's ineffective. Well, of course you can. My job is to say, well, that's an ineffective approach.
Yeah.
In order to get more, really achieve the outcomes that you want to use a different method or a different approach. And here's how. But I really don't think I've ever told a client that they can't do something. And honestly, I don't think I tell anyone anymore that they can't do something. And it goes back to where I am at this stage in my life is I really do believe we all have the power of choice. And if you want to choose something that is ineffective or even that is harmful to your own well-being, that is your choice.
Yeah.
It is. I can give you all the information that would suggest otherwise, but that's your choice.
Well, it all comes back to choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying I can't, I can try.
I can try.
I can try. If you fall, you fumble. You're like Miss Liz. Miss Liz falls all the time.
I do too. You're not there by yourself. I do too.
I'm a fumbler.
Or you can say, I'm not going to try. I choose to not try. I choose to get someone else to do it for me. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's so many options out there, but I like what you said in terms of stop telling ourselves that we can't, because I think it's easier to change how we speak to other people as opposed to our internal dialogue and internal narrative and how we speak to ourselves. And so, I really hope that people learn the skills, not unlearn, but choose themselves and learn the skills of being kinder to themselves.
Absolutely. And that's why the T comes from within us, right? It's the way we talk to ourselves. It's the choices that we make for our own lives, the situations that we allow to keep happening, where sometimes we need to close a chapter. We need to close that door in order to open a new chapter and a new, avenue. And I just love having you here, Dr. Carrie, because I know that you like to spill the personal tea.
I do. And you know what? Here's another piece. Here's another drop of the personal tea, right? Like I used to be so incredibly private. Like people that I worked with didn't know anything about me, like nothing. That they'd say, well, what'd you have for dinner last night? A little bit of this, a little bit of that, right? Like, and the truth of the matter is, my life is pretty simple and kind of boring, but I didn't want to let people in. And a lot of that was fear of judgment. But at this point, I recognize how when we share our stories, whether it's our missteps or our successes, right? I didn't use the word failures, but our missteps or our successes, when I share those, it's an opportunity for someone else to learn.
Yeah.
And truth be told, when you tell your own story and hear it, it's an opportunity for you to reflect. And sometimes we all need to reflect and just be reminded of, right? And so there's really nothing that you could ask me or anyone could ask me and I would tell it. Whatever it is, I would share that because I know the power of hearing people's stories, even the ones that are painful to tell.
Yep.
they can serve a positive purpose.
And that's what we do is we serve real tea here.
Yeah.
Not the beverage, but we serve the storytelling and the words, and we have some fun and we get into it.
We do. Yeah, we do. I love it. I love it. I love it.
We go deep, right? Right from the get-go.
Yes.
So Dr. Carrie, if anybody would like to reach out to you, how could they reach out to you?
They can find me at my website, drcarriegraham.com. That's where I am. It talks about the website, drcarriegraham.com. You'll find information about my services, my core values, but the gift that I want to offer is there's some personal stuff on there about me that I'm happy that it gives people a window into who I am. But also they can always ask me questions. And so there are places on my website for people to connect with me and build relationship and get the support that they need, whether it's teaching everyone adequately or whether it's engaging, retaining, and applying information, like whatever way works for them and whatever the need is, there's an opportunity for us to connect. So visit my website, drcarriegraham.com.
There you go, guys. Run on over, check her out, and we're going to spill some tea.
Yes.
Well, I had a blast with you, Dr. Carrie Graham. And without all of you listeners and supporters out there, Miss Liz could not do this. And I enjoy these conversations, and I hope you do as well. I'm open to feedback. Give me some feedback. We will be back with 2 final tea times for October, and November's lineup has been released as of yesterday. So check that out, or go to Miss Liz's website at www.misslizsteatime.com, and you can see the list of the lineup. It's a real diverse opportunity to get to know people next month and this month and the months before. Check out all the previous tea times because there's incredible ones out there. And I will be back on the 28th with Jose Perel. He's going to be sharing his story about a hostage situation that he was involved in that took his life for 5 years, and now he's a motivational speaker. So we'll have his story. And then on the 29th, we have Joyce Fiddler coming in, and she's going to be talking about sex, drugs, and baby booming, all that good stuff. So you just never know what's coming to tea, right? We spill good, hard tea on this show. So until then, I will see everybody same time, same place, and we'll spill the TEA with all of you all over again. Thank you and have a good night.
Good night.